Kogo News Time, 6:42.
A growing number of U.S. schools are scrapping standardized test scores as part of the admission process.
Joining us on the Kogo News Live line is education expert Gene Burk. And Gene, are the SATs and the ACTs, they've been around forever. Many of us have taken them. Are these a good way to measure whether a student is ready for college?
You know, they really are, and let me tell you why, even though most people hate them. You know, a 4.0 at one high school is not necessarily a 4.0 at another high school, since every school weighs and calculates their scores differently. So the only fair way, or the only numerical indicator that's common to all students, is a test like an SAT, because it does level the playing field. But I think the misconception comes in the fact that what these tests are really testing. Yes, they do test basic grammar and basic math, but they really are logic tests, which means what happens is they're testing the critical thinking skills of the students. And that's why a lot of students don't do well on them, because they don't realize that, and they don't realize that the questions are misleading and wrong answers look appealing. So it's very easy to fall for the wrong answer.
So what's the reason that you would get rid of it if you were a college, you know, saying, okay, we don't need SAT or ACT scores for you to get in here? What would be the purpose of doing that?
Well, you know, I think they're trying to attract more applicants, but actually, if you read the fine print on these test optional schools, what you're going to find, number one, is that it applies to most of those schools on the list are specialized schools. 95% of four-year universities are not test optional. And when you read any test flexible policies, most of them still require some sort of entrance exam. So if it's not an SAT or an ACT, they maybe have their own placement test, which is very similar to begin with. So I don't think that the kids realize that they're still going to have to take the test. And more importantly, if the kids are going to be applying for scholarships or merit aid, they still have to turn in their SAT score.
So, all right, here's another question that a lot of people are asking is, does an SAT or ACT score, does it indicate how well a child is going to do, or are some kids just poor test takers?
Well, that's a two-part question. Yes, some kids are poor test takers. I mean, you've got some kids who are naturally, logically minded, that they kind of do well naturally, and then the other kids may be just as smart, but they don't understand that this is a logic test. But as far as the indication of college success, the reason why the colleges love to use this is because, number one, kids look all the kind of the same on paper. They all look very similar. But what they've been able to do is collect data over the years and, you know, a proven track record of the success of success in college, because they'll look at a student, for example, maybe 4 years ago who scored a 1,300, and then they'll look at a student today who scored a 1,300, and they can kind of have a good idea over all the years of record keeping of how well that student's going to do. So it kind of is their only way to measure students, since you know the GPA isn't that reliable, because there's so many inflated grades or a lot of politics involved.
All right, education expert Gene Burk joining us this morning on the Kogo News Live line about standardized tests.